including a 13-year-old at the Enyobeni tavern in East London in the Eastern Cape.
To the Eastern Cape now, particularly in East London.
Of the Enyobeni tavern, where at least 21 teenagers lost their lives.
The community of Scenery Park is pained by these deaths.
26th of June 2022 is a day forever etched into the minds of most South Africans. In the early hours of that morning, word began to spread about a tragedy in the city of East London, in the Eastern Cape province, situated on the southeastern coast of South Africa. Details of the event were unclear, with many reports offering conflicting statements. Radio and television news broadcasts provided different versions of what had happened. The only certainty was that many young people, teenagers, had lost their lives in a crowded tavern. Initial reports mentioned a stampede, some suggested tear gas, and a few speculated about a carbon monoxide leak. Days later, government officials announced they could not determine the cause of death. Uncertainty soon turned to frustration and anger as rumors spread on social media about bouncers deploying pepper spray before locking the kids inside. One particularly alarming comment on Facebook read, "Why are those bouncers still alive?" The situation was extremely volatile. People wanted answers, and heartbroken parents wanted to know who and what was responsible. Now, 2 years later, officials still have not provided a clear answer. So what really happened? To try and answer that question, let's go back to where and how it all started. In mid-June 2022, a local tavern called Enyobeni posted a promotion on their Facebook page, advertising a pens down party to be held on 25 June 2022. The post promised free alcohol and food, going viral with the tagline, "It's going to be a great time." A pens down party is typically held after senior year students finish their exams. Unlike in the US, where students receive a diploma, exams are compulsory for high school completion in many other countries. This stressful period likely drives the desire for post-exam celebrations, akin to America's spring break. Though pens down parties are meant for senior year students, these events often attract underage teenagers. Enyobeni Tavern was already notorious for serving minors and had faced several complaints from residents about loud music and drunken teens littering and urinating on neighbors' walls. However, the police reportedly could not find records of these complaints. The legal drinking age in South Africa is 18, yet the Enyobeni Tavern was known for serving drinks to minors. The tavern, originally a single-story building, had recently been remodeled with an unauthorized upstairs balcony. South African law requires any building accommodating more than 25 people and with more than one floor to have at least 2 emergency exits in opposite directions. The tavern had only one entrance, a single metal door on the bottom floor. It is estimated that over 300 people showed up for the event. When Thembisa Diko, a bouncer at the venue, arrived at 6 p.m., the street was already packed with children all the way to the nearest petrol station. "I went to my post at the gate to do my job," she stated. "I was with my colleague. We searched the kids, but some started pushing their way in towards me, squashing me in the process." Diko said she had to abandon her station when the crowd started to force their way in through the gate. She then headed upstairs and realized the venue was getting excessively overcrowded. She told the owner that they were unable to control the crowd. That same evening, 13-year-old Thembinkosi Silwani told his mother, "I'm coming back, Mama," before heading out. He was not even in high school yet, attending Zwelamfundo Primary School, and would be the youngest of 21 victims to lose their lives on that tragic night. One parent recounted how their teenage child told them they would be spending the night at a friend's home, only to be identified as one of the victims later. Another parent told reporters, "My 17-year-old son asked for money, but there was no clarification on how he was planning to spend it." A teenager who attended the event said, "When you buy one bottle, you get another for free." Everything was free there. Alcohol was free. Even food we got for free. A 14-year-old, who cannot be named because he is a minor, explained how he managed to slip into the tavern undetected. The place was packed and no one noticed me, he said. It was too full for security to monitor who was coming in or going out. When they sprayed the pepper spray, I was still inside the tavern before they closed the door. I didn't see the pepper spray, but I could smell it. Another survivor told how a dying victim begged her to save her life. I was rushing outside. A girl was saying, "Sister, please help me. I'm dying," said the 24-year-old survivor. Some reports claim that the doors were shut just after 1 a.m. to keep more people from entering the already packed venue. About an hour later, chaos ensued. People outside were pressing to get in from the cold weather, while those inside were trying to get out. A neighbor, Melita Kakazu, recalls hearing people jump on her roof and called the police numerous times between 2:25 and 3:35 a.m. She said they only showed up at 4 p.m. She then helped a young girl with a broken leg into her home until an ambulance arrived at 7 p.m. Another survivor, a 17-year-old girl, said, "I am having flashbacks of seeing some of the people who died right in front of my eyes. I have never seen this in my life." The girl, who was visibly traumatized and could hardly finish a sentence without having to regain herself, continued, "I am struggling to do anything."
The kids were really suffocating. They cried, they tried calling. Others tried biting each other. Just to check if the others were still alive. Because I was there too, inside. I was suffocated with them. But I was helped by another kid who was standing in front of our friends. They told us that our friends were upstairs. And then we went there. We found them. We stayed there 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and then 3 o'clock. I wanted to go pee. Around 3:15, the circle to stop and started at that time. Yeah. The bouncer did hear us when we were screaming for help. He did see children die in front of him, but he did nothing like to help. He didn't open the gate. He closed the gate on purpose. For what? We don't know. We still want to know, like, what happened? Why did he close the gate for us to not come out, even though we were crying, screaming?
Una amanzi nje lo mntana lona wanikwa isavana kwathiwa makasele isavana after 3 hours yakhe later emkile efendini. So oyi-1 ifamily yam nam bendipha ngaphakathi. So abantwana mna sisi wam ndithe ndingena nje ndabona yonke itafile kukho iyegamais apha ndaseliswa ngoyi-1 umntana ondaziyo lona beleli phezu kwetafile oye wasilosa yena waleka. So ke ngoku sisi wam phaya iibhouncer zezivalo and phaya kabe bekuthiwa banyathela aba bantu benyathelwe njani lo phezu kwetafile ngoba bendipha mna ndizamile uzama uphuma ndatsiba ngefestile lowa ezayo ngendipha nam kanye ngendisarhiwe uba bikhona tear gas mna khandive tear gas uba akho tear gas ngani lokuba qha umnikazi wethaveni aze abantwana aba bashiya.
The owner, Siakangela Ndevu, initially denied being present on that tragic night, but state witness Nalo Tisana later testified that he was flirting with her while they both waited in line at the bar that night. "I was shocked to see him on TV in the morning, described as the owner of the tavern," she said, "because he was among us on the dance floor and in the queue at the bar when people started dropping. He just looked at them motionlessly," she stated during her testimony. "He was there. I have pictures with him. He was happy to see the youth buying alcohol at his tavern." She also told the court that when she was in the queue to get in, she witnessed bouncers turn away older men, saying that the event was for the youth. She then testified that patrons dropped to the floor while music was blaring and party-goers were dancing. She said that she fled the chaos to catch a breath of fresh air on the balcony. When she told other patrons that people were dying inside, they laughed at me. They thought I was joking. Deco, the female bouncer, says she was on the top floor when she noticed children dropping to the floor. She also recalls a man helping children who jumped out of the windows. Those who were inside were jumping to nearby rooftops. Inside, people were falling to the ground, she stated. She eventually went downstairs and found bodies scattered all over the tavern. The doors to the VIP section had also been broken. When we tried to wake them up, she recalls, we realized they were dead. We poured water over them, but they did not wake up. I'm sorry. I feel sorry for the families. Had we been able to control the crowds, this would not have happened. I feel sorry, especially for the parents. These are their children at the end of the day, said Deco. A 17-year-old girl who remained anonymous had an interview with radio station True FM and shared her account of what happened. The survivor, who was a grade 12 learner at a Bloemfontein school, said she saw the promotional post trending on social media and decided to attend with 2 of her friends. The bouncers closed the door, and just as we were about to revolt against that, we started smelling tear gas. There's only one entrance exit, so people couldn't come in or go out. I fainted while we were downstairs. However, I woke up after a few hours on the stairs, so I assumed someone took me upstairs, she explained. She then tried to assist her 2 friends, but they soon died in her arms. Brian Mapeza, a rapper who survived the event, said that when he finished his set on the 2nd floor, he could hear people gasping for air. As he was trying to leave and made his way downstairs, he noticed the doors were being shut. The building was stuffed with people, and everyone was pressed so tightly against each other that his legs went numb. He was also bitten by 2 people as they tried to climb over him. He said that the music only stopped when screams started to pierce through the pandemonium. By this point, people had even started to jump from the 2nd floor. When bouncers finally opened the door, most people had escaped through windows and over the top floor balcony. They then carried some of the bodies out. By morning, news about the event began to spread around the neighborhood, with photos of the bodies being shared on social media. One woman recalled how she was traumatized when she saw her brother in one of those pictures. Many nervous parents showed up at the tavern and waited for hours to find out if their children were among the victims. Chulumenko was a grade 11 pupil at Kakamba High School. She asked to go to the Pens Down event, and I gave her permission to do so, her mother said. She is the only one still missing because all her friends returned home, and that's why I came to look for her. Salman went to the scene with families from Gompo whose children had not returned from the tavern. He said a family member saw their loved ones in the pictures posted on social media and appealed to people to stop publishing pictures of the bodies before their next of kin were notified. It's very traumatic for the parents. The number of victims reached 21. It was 3 weeks after the incident that police put out a statement that there was one body left in the morgue that had not been identified yet. Another 17-year-old survivor said she was struggling to come to terms with the incident, detailing the events leading up to it. She said, "We were told to wear black and white. It was the DJ's birthday. While we were sitting inside at around 12 a.m., someone sprayed pepper spray and we ran out. We did not see who sprayed the pepper spray, but we were told it was the owner and he wanted us to leave. We left and went to another place. When we came back again, the door was locked and the bouncer would not let us in because it was already packed inside. I came back home, and in the morning, I saw on Facebook that some of the people who were there had perished. Most of them are my friends. I have been unable to sleep. This morning I could not go to school. I do not know what school will be like now," she said. Another survivor, a 19-year-old, said she thought she too would lose her life. "We tried moving through the crowd, shouting, 'Please let us through.' And others were shouting, 'We are suffocating, and there are people who can't breathe,'" she told AFP. "I passed out at that moment. I was running out of breath, and there was a strong smell of some type of spray in the air. We thought it was pepper spray. It was also reported to the police that witnesses saw 4 young men robbing the bodies of their valuables, ranging from cash, phones, a watch, to wigs and weaves. CCTV footage later confirmed this, and the 4 suspects were later arrested and charged with theft and possession of stolen property. The police managed to recover only a few of the stolen items, which included shoes, weaves, clothing, and a watch. These were recovered in the homes of the suspects. Investigation and initial reports. The cause of the mysterious deaths was still being investigated by police when the children were buried during a mass funeral on Wednesday, July 6, 2022. Initial reports of a stampede were dismissed as the bodies showed no visible injuries. Some victims were reported to have made it outside, where they then collapsed after walking a short distance unassisted, and others succumbed to the mysterious ailment en route to the hospital. An early report stated that trace amounts of methanol and carbon monoxide levels were detected in all 21 bodies of the victims. On August 18, 2022, the Eastern Cape government held a press conference and announced that they had ruled out a stampede as the cause. They also ruled out alcohol poisoning and carbon monoxide as the cause. Dr. Letha Manning-Wayne of the Department of Health said blood and gastric samples were taken from all 21 individuals for toxicology analysis. The post-mortem was conducted in the Western Cape. The analysis looked at blood alcohol levels, carbon monoxide levels, and qualitative methanol levels, and found that the blood alcohol levels ranged from 0.05 grams to 0.26 grams per 100 milliliters. The numbers were low enough to completely rule out alcohol poisoning. Carbon monoxide levels were found to be between 3 and 21% of hemoglobin, said Maddie Wayne. We expect toxicology or lethal levels to be above 50%. While researching how to interpret these results, I came across this helpful summary on the Mayo Clinic website. To summarize, normal carbon monoxide levels are between 0 and 2%. Anything above 20% is toxic. Factors that could skew the test results and show lower concentrations include the length of exposure, metabolic activity, and whether the patient was removed from the contaminated environment a significant amount of time before the blood samples were taken. It has been reported that some of the victims were still breathing when the door was opened downstairs. Also, how long did it take to collect and transport the samples to Cape Town from the Eastern Cape? Since officials almost immediately denied the carbon monoxide claims, I'm guessing there was no hurry to secure the samples. Dr. Letha Matiwan, who read the report in a news conference, concluded with, "Methanol was also detected in all 21 young people," said Maddie Wayne. "We still need to get the quantitative levels, which will tell us whether they were at lethal or non-lethal levels as well. In summary, we have moved from excluding the stampede. There are no conclusive results that say this was the lethal concoction that we are dealing with." By the end of August, the families of the victims were summoned to appear at a meeting. The parents were then called in individually. When the parents objected, they were told that each report would be different. They were then individually informed that the cause of death was suffocation. When parents discussed it, they realized that none of the reports were different. They were all told the same thing. As you can imagine, the parents were not happy with this finding, and when they asked to be given a copy of the report, their requests were denied, and they were told that they would need to go to court if they wanted a copy. Legal defense and court proceedings. The defense, led by tavern owner Vuyokazi Ndevu and her husband, has consistently maintained their innocence, stating that it was the teenagers themselves who had forced their way into the establishment. The state showed CCTV footage of the day. In the footage, tavern owner Siakangala could be seen scanning liquor on the counter and accepting cash from the customers. However, they could not determine the ages of the customers he was serving. On December 1st, 2023, the court proceedings concluded as the state and defense closed their cases. The state's case rests on the statements of two witnesses, former tavern employees, Sivuyile Gakamalana and Zoliswa Duma, who on the stand denied selling alcohol to minors. After they were arrested and questioned by police, they paid a fine of 2,000 rands for selling alcohol to minors. They argued that they were not aware that paying the fine constituted an admission of guilt, as all they wanted to do was go home. They also insisted that they took precautions to manage overcrowding at the tavern. The case then adjourned until February 21, 2024, for closing arguments. The couple was accused of violating the country's Liquor Act by selling alcohol to individuals under 18. The law states that a person must not sell or supply liquor to a minor, and that a person must take reasonable measures to determine accurately whether or not a person is a minor before selling or supplying liquor to that person. Any person found guilty of this offense may be held liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 1 million rand or to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 5 years. They were ultimately found guilty, and each of them was ordered to pay a fine of 5,000 rands each or face 100 days in jail. There are a few inconsistencies that I found in the story. Liquor license. To apply for a liquor license, an inspector needs to come out to your premises for an inspection. The inspector needs to make sure that your premises are up to code, and only then will you receive a liquor license. The owner presumably passed this test in 2020, but a liquor license also has to be renewed every year by no later than December 31st. Again, an inspector needs to come out to the premises to ensure that everything is still okay. The building was recently remodeled, adding another floor and increasing the capacity of the building to more than 25 people, which means that by law, a second escape route needs to be added to the building. If the license was renewed in December, which is 6 months before the incident, then surely an inspector must have come out to the property to issue the new liquor license. So the key question is, did the inspector investigate the premises before the license was issued? That is what the inspection is supposed to be for, to make sure that the premises are safe before the license can be renewed. Exposure. The owner and staff members were reported to be inside the venue when people started to collapse, meaning that they were also exposed to whatever was poisoning the bar patrons. Why would they expose themselves to poison if they were the ones spraying it? It was also stated by some of the survivors that the tear gas was sprayed before the doors were shut at 1 p.m. and remained closed until 3 p.m. Have the patrons been relaxing and dancing in the tear gas for 2 hours? Rumors. Officials were under a lot of pressure from the public to find someone responsible because of the rumors that were going around about tear gas and pepper spray.
Survivors say the owners of Enyobeni Tavern should be arrested for selling alcohol to minors.
Police are facing criticism over their response on the Enyobeni tragedy. Residents say failure by police to conduct patrols meant they couldn't see overcrowding at the tavern. Locals marched to the local police station demanding accountability over the tragedy. So accused police of being unavailable when 2 teenagers started getting ill prior to the tragedy.
The thing about tear gas is that you don't smell it. Instead, it burns your lungs, your skin, and your eyes. Tear gas doesn't cause you to fall unconscious without warning. Instead, you'd be in excruciating pain, scrambling to get away. Contamination of evidence. The very first blunder was that the police failed to secure the scene, resulting in the contamination of evidence. Police were also preoccupied with trying to find perpetrators with tear gas instead of determining the cause of death. When they failed to find any tear gas, they decided to arrest the tavern staff for selling alcohol to underage teens. But when they were on the scene, they secured no statements from any underage teenagers who could definitely say that they were served drinks by any of the staff. Instead, the staff were rounded up and placed in a jail cell. They were then told that if they wanted to go home, they would need to pay a fine. If you were in that situation with the police desperate to make arrests and blame someone for the incident, would you dare to refuse to pay that fine and willingly return to a jail cell filled with violent criminals? There was no video evidence of the employees confessing, or even a signed statement. If all the victims had methanol in their systems, why did they not find the source of the methanol? Failure to collect such basic evidence or to follow basic procedure does not fill me with any confidence to trust that they will be able to solve even simple crimes, never mind such a high-profile case. Toxicology report and carbon monoxide. The toxicology report showed elevated levels of carbon monoxide in the victim's blood. A result of 20% is considered a toxic level. The initial disagreement about the carbon monoxide diagnosis stems from the fact that this original diagnosis was made by government pathology expert Dr. Solomon Zondi from the East London Mortuary Department, who found trace amounts of carbon monoxide during the first post-mortem. Also, the injuries on the bodies were confirmed by the mortuary experts to be consistent with that of chemical asphyxia. That's from the experts. Then you have the police, who have been called by many neighbors over the years and asked to deal with the tavern. Those complaints have fallen on deaf ears. So now what do you do if you are the police? You accept responsibility and apologize, right? Apparently not if you are in East London. When the initial reports of carbon monoxide started to circulate, the very next morning, government officials even went on radio stations to threaten those reporters who did report on the carbon monoxide angle with legal action. The exact wording was that they would come after anyone who reports on carbon monoxide poisoning with the Spreading of False Information Act. Cause of death: suffocation. In medical terms, suffocation refers to death associated with deprivation of oxygen, either partial or complete, either from a lack of oxygen in the surrounding environment or obstruction of the upper airway. It's quite apparent that the victims were not strangled, and a stampede was ruled out because the victims were not trampled. The only other option is chemical asphyxia. This is when chemical fumes displace the amount of oxygen in the air. Carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide dynamics. Carbon monoxide is just one of many chemical fumes which can inconspicuously displace oxygen levels enough to make you pass out. Carbon monoxide has no smell and does not burn your lungs. Also, you do not have to be in an environment completely devoid of oxygen to suffocate. The air we breathe is only 21% oxygen. The rest is nitrogen, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and other gases. If you were in an enclosed room, for instance, breathing in oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide, the oxygen in the air would get displaced with carbon dioxide. You wouldn't even notice it because carbon dioxide is not toxic to human beings. It does not burn your throat and nose, and you can't even smell it. If there were 10 people in the room, the air would be used up 10 times faster. Watch this guy who decides to sit down, and this guy who drops his phone and bends down to pick it up. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air and spreads along the ground, which can collect in enclosed spaces. Carbon monoxide, on the other hand, is slightly lighter than air and will collect from the top of an enclosed space. If there were a generator nearby, then the generator would also use oxygen and release carbon monoxide, causing the oxygen levels in the air to drop even faster. Carbon dioxide is generated by humans breathing out, but it is also generated by other sources, such as dry ice. From reports, we have heard that the doors to the tavern were shut at 1 a.m. Patrons started to collapse at 3:15 a.m. That's 2 hours for the room to fill up with any of those gases, or both. This would be influenced by factors like how many people were in the room and how active they were. For instance, heavy dancing and shouting will deplete oxygen levels quicker. Also, were the windows shut? Is the door airtight? I noticed that the upstairs area has doors separating it from the ground floor, obviously to keep the noise out, because upstairs they were listening to rappers performing. With those doors kept closed, it cut off another source of oxygen, which is why only the people downstairs collapsed. Have the owners been made scapegoats to hide incompetence from our leaders? A botched investigation, delayed testing of the samples, and did officials follow procedure before renewing the liquor license? Obviously not, because after the tragedy, those officials showed up to inspect the venue while acting surprised. The most we can blame the tavern owners for in this case is negligence, not murder. The tragedy at Enyobeni can be attributed to corruption, mismanagement, and incompetence. The liquor license system is supposed to be there for the protection of the public, but instead, it is being used by those in power as a means to make large amounts of money, many times by illegal means. Broader societal issues. The case has also strengthened support for South Africa's Liquor Amendment Bill, which was proposed in 2016 to raise the drinking age to 21. While those in government have a history of trying to force people to stop drinking alcohol through various bans, curfews, and regulations, nobody asks the question, why do South Africans feel the need to drink? What are they trying to escape? Why not try a two-handed approach by trying to alleviate the suffering of those living in poverty, as well as enforcing existing laws? Alcohol is just one symptom of a much bigger issue we are facing. South Africans are not happy.
Many here live in poverty.
The money runs out before the month is over. We struggle to survive.
Government statistics show that poverty levels have increased since 2011.
30 million South Africans live in poverty. That's just over half the population. Most of those affected are children. The poorest of the poor live on just $35 a month.
As I mentioned, South Africans are feeling hopeless and angry.
African women remain the most vulnerable, with an unemployment rate of 39.9%.
17 million households, but almost 60% of them are in informal settlements, growing inequality in the country.
We ignore issues relating to mental health and attack the symptoms when they manifest. If teenagers feel the need to escape their reality with alcohol and drugs, then maybe the reality that they live in is part of the problem. Kids, just like adults, want happiness and meaning in their lives, both of which we are failing to provide.